Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly wondered what you came in for? Or maybe you've set your keys down somewhere only to spend 20 minutes searching for them as if they had vanished into thin air. These little moments of forgetfulness can feel harmless at first, something we laugh off with friends by saying, "Oh, that's just me getting older." But sometimes, behind these everyday lapses, there's something more dangerous at play, something we rarely think about. I want to share with you a story that struck me deeply. It's about a man named Richard. He was 76, living a quiet, comfortable life after retirement. He loved gardening, reading the newspaper with his morning coffee, and spending weekends watching his grandkids play in the yard. He seemed perfectly healthy, sharp, and alert. But then, little by little, his memory began to slip. At first, it was small things, forgetting names, missing appointments, misplacing bills. Soon those slips grew more serious. He would forget conversations he'd had just hours earlier. One day, he even got lost driving home from a grocery store he had been going to for over 20 years. Doctors ran tests, and while aging was certainly part of the story, they uncovered something shocking. A major contributor to his declining memory wasn't genetics or stress or simply the passage of time. It was something he ate every single day, believing it was harmless. It was a food he had trusted his whole life, a food that seemed so normal it never crossed his mind that it could be dangerous. But it was silently harming his brain day after day until the damage became impossible to ignore. Now, before I tell you what that food is, let's take a step back and think about how our bodies and minds change after 60. Our brains are like delicate engines. They rely on clean fuel, proper maintenance, and protection from damage. When we're young, the body is resilient. It bounces back. But after 60, everything we put into our bodies has a bigger impact. Some foods that seemed fine in our 30s or 40s can quietly speed up aging in our 70s, especially in the brain. That's why it's so important to pay attention not just to what we eat, but how it affects us long term. And here's the part that surprises many people. It's not always the obvious junk foods that do the most harm. Yes, soda, chips, and fried foods can hurt us, but often the most dangerous foods are the ones we trust, the ones we think are healthy enough or harmless. That was Richard's mistake. He never binged on fast food, he didn't drink much alcohol, and he tried to eat balanced meals. Yet he unknowingly let one common food into his diet that sabotaged his memory every single day. Imagine for a moment how devastating it feels to sit at the dinner table with your family and struggle to remember your granddaughter's name, or to be in your own neighborhood and suddenly not recognize the street you've driven down for decades. Memory isn't just about facts, it's our connection to the people we love, the experiences we've lived, the independence we want to keep as we grow older. Losing that isn't just frustrating, it's heartbreaking, and no one deserves to have their golden years stolen from them because of something as simple as the food on their plate. The truth is, certain foods create inflammation in the brain. Over time, this inflammation disrupts the way brain cells communicate with each other. It's like static on a radio. Signals get scrambled, messages don't go through, and memories that should be clear suddenly vanish. On the outside, this looks like forgetfulness, but inside the brain is struggling, weighed down by years of silent damage. Richard's doctors told him that the food behind much of his decline was refined sugar. It was hiding everywhere. In his morning cereal, in the low-fat yogurt he thought was healthy, in the sauces and dressings he used without a second thought. He wasn't sitting down with a giant bowl of candy every day, but the hidden sugar in his meals added up. It slowly spiked his blood sugar, created inflammation, and over time impaired his brain's ability to stay sharp. What's so tricky about sugar is that it doesn't always taste obvious. Even foods we don't think of as sweet can be loaded with it. Bread, pasta sauce, canned soups, even so-called healthy granola bars are packed with sugar. And when we eat these foods every day, the brain pays the price. You might be wondering, does this mean you should never touch sugar again? Not exactly, Our bodies can handle small amounts, especially when it comes from natural sources like fruit. The real danger comes from added sugars, the extra teaspoons manufacturers slip into processed foods to make them taste better. These are the sugars that sneak into your bloodstream, overwork your insulin response, and slowly starve your brain of clarity. Think of it this way: your brain runs on glucose, which is a natural form of sugar. But too much, especially from processed sources, overwhelms the system. It's like watering a plant. A little water keeps it alive, but drowning it will kill it. Richard didn't realize he was drowning his brain every morning with his healthy bowl of cereal, or every afternoon with that flavored yogurt. Over time, those innocent choices built up until his memory began to unravel. The good news is the brain has an incredible ability to heal when we remove the triggers that harm it. When Richard finally cut down on hidden sugars and replaced them with real, nourishing foods like vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and lean proteins, his decline slowed. He didn't magically reverse every symptom, but his doctors noticed improvements. His energy stabilized, his mood lifted, and his forgetfulness didn't worsen at the same frightening pace. That simple change gave him back a measure of control, and with it, hope. So let me ask you, when you think about what you ate today, how much of it came from fresh, natural ingredients, and how much came from a package or a box? It's not about being perfect. It's about making small shifts that protect your brain for the years to come. If you swap out that sugary cereal for a bowl of oatmeal with berries, you've already taken a powerful step. If you replace flavored yogurt with plain yogurt and a drizzle of honey, you've lightened the load on your memory. These small choices add up just as the harmful ones do. Richard's story is a reminder that what we put on our plates today shapes how clearly we think tomorrow. And no matter your age, it's never too late to make changes. Every meal is a chance to feed your brain with something that strengthens it rather than weakens it. When Richard first learned that sugar was behind so much of his memory trouble, he felt shocked, maybe even a little betrayed. For decades, he had been told to avoid fat, to cut back on salt, to eat more whole grains. But no one had ever warned him that the sweetener hiding in his favorite foods could be damaging his brain as much as his waistline. That's the thing about sugar. It doesn't just sit in your belly, it travels through your bloodstream, reaching every organ, and the brain, unfortunately, is one of its easiest targets. You see, the brain is an energy-hungry organ. It makes up only about 2% of our body weight, but it consumes about 20% of our daily energy. That energy mostly comes in the form of glucose, a simple sugar that fuels brain cells. When the balance is right, glucose keeps the mind sharp, focused, and alert. But when the balance is tipped, when we flood the system with added sugars, the brain starts to malfunction. It's like overloading a delicate electrical circuit. Eventually, it short circuits. The first thing to understand is that not all sugar is created equal. Natural sugars, the ones found in fruits and vegetables, are bundled with fiber, vitamins, and minerals. They enter the bloodstream slowly, giving the brain a steady stream of energy. But added sugars, the kind you find in sodas, pastries, packaged snacks, and even so-called healthy foods like granola bars, rush into the bloodstream all at once. This sudden surge creates chaos. Blood sugar spikes, insulin surges to control it, and the brain gets caught in the storm. Over time, this roller coaster leaves brain cells damaged and less able to communicate with each other. That's where the memory problems begin. Think about the last time you ate a big slice of cake or indulged in a sugary drink. Maybe you felt a burst of energy at first, but an hour later you felt drained, sluggish, or even irritable. That crash is a small glimpse of what's happening inside your brain. Imagine that process repeating day after day, year after year. Eventually, the brain's ability to stay sharp weakens like a once strong muscle that's been overworked without rest. And here's the part that's truly concerning. Researchers are now calling Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes because of how strongly it's linked to sugar and insulin resistance in the brain. That means sugar doesn't just make us forgetful, it can lay the groundwork for severe memory decline and dementia. For people over 60, this connection is critical. If we don't take control of sugar in our diets, we may be opening the door to problems that steal our independence in the years ahead. But how do we take control when sugar is everywhere? It's not enough to avoid desserts. Hidden sugars lurk in foods that don't even taste sweet. Bread, ketchup, canned beans, salad dressings, flavored oatmeal, and even low-fat products often contain surprising amounts. Food companies know that sugar makes things taste better, so they add it to almost everything. That's why Richard never thought he was eating too much. He wasn't a dessert lover, but sugar still snuck into nearly every meal. The first step is awareness. When you pick up a food package, take a look at the label. Added sugars go by many different names: corn syrup, dextrose, fructose, maltose, rice syrup, cane juice. Sometimes there are 2 or 3 types in the same product, making it easy to underestimate just how much you're eating. A good rule of thumb is this: if sugar in any form is listed in the first 3 ingredients, it's probably too much. Once Richard began checking labels, he was stunned. His healthy granola bar had 12 grams of added sugar, nearly as much as a candy bar. His morning cereal, marketed with words like heart healthy and whole grain, was loaded with sweeteners. Even the canned soup he thought was savory had sugar snuck in. It was like uncovering a hidden enemy that had been quietly attacking him for years. The second step is making simple swaps. Instead of sweetened yogurt, try plain yogurt with fresh fruit. Instead of sugary cereal, try steel-cut oats topped with nuts and a drizzle of honey. Instead of bottled salad dressing, mix olive oil, vinegar, and herbs. These little shifts don't feel like sacrifices, but they reduce the burden on the brain dramatically. Richard's wife, Susan, supported him through the change, and together they discovered something surprising. Once they cut out the extra sugar, their taste buds adjusted. Foods that once seemed bland suddenly tasted rich and flavorful. The natural sweetness of an apple or a handful of berries became satisfying in a way processed snacks never had been. It was as if their bodies had been craving real nourishment all along. Beyond memory, the changes were felt in other ways too. Richard noticed that his energy no longer dipped in the afternoons. He wasn't falling asleep in his chair after lunch. He also found it easier to control his weight, and his doctor told him his blood pressure and cholesterol were improving. All of these benefits came from one core decision: reducing hidden sugar. If you've ever felt nervous about changing your diet, remember this: it doesn't have to happen overnight. You don't need to throw out everything in your pantry tomorrow. Start small. Replace one sugary food with a healthier alternative each week. The brain thrives on consistency, not perfection. Even cutting back by a little each day reduces inflammation and gives your memory a better chance to stay sharp. And let's be honest, sugar isn't just about taste. For many of us, it's tied to comfort and tradition. A slice of pie at Thanksgiving, cookies at Christmas, a sweet cup of tea in the afternoon. These moments bring joy, and they shouldn't be erased. The key is to enjoy them mindfully as special treats rather than daily staples. When sugar becomes an occasional guest instead of a permanent resident, the brain can breathe easier. What struck Richard the most was how much power he actually had. For years he felt like memory decline was something he couldn't fight, something written into the story of aging. But when he realized that food played such a big role, he felt empowered. Each meal became a choice, a chance to either harm or protect his brain. That shift in mindset gave him hope, and that's something I want you to hold on to as well, because here's the truth: you are not powerless against memory loss. Yes, aging changes the brain, but lifestyle choices make a tremendous difference. By becoming aware of what's on your plate, by making small swaps, and by cutting back on the hidden sugars that silently attack your memory, you're taking steps that protect your most precious asset, your mind. As Richard and Susan continued their journey toward healthier eating, something interesting began to unfold. They realized that sugar wasn't just acting alone, it was teaming up with other habits, other foods, and even their daily routines in ways that made memory decline worse. It was as if sugar was the spark, but the fire spread because of everything around it. You see, the body and brain don't work in isolation. What we eat interacts with how we sleep, how stressed we feel, how active we are, and even the company we keep. That's why cutting back on sugar is powerful, but it becomes even more effective when we look at the whole picture of our daily lives. One of the first lessons Richard learned was about processed foods in general. Sugar rarely travels alone. It often comes packaged with unhealthy fats, too much sodium, and chemicals the body doesn't recognize. These convenience foods may be quick, but they ask a heavy price from the brain. Imagine fueling your car with gasoline that's been watered down with sand and dirt. It might run for a while, but over time, the engine clogs and sputters. That's what happens to the brain when we rely on boxed, canned, or fast foods. Richard used to keep frozen dinners in the freezer for nights when he didn't feel like cooking. They tasted fine, but the labels revealed the truth, not just sugar, but preservatives and trans fats, all of which increase inflammation, and inflammation is the real villain here. When the brain is inflamed, communication between brain cells slows down, memory storage weakens, and mood often plummets. What looks like just getting older is sometimes the direct result of what's sitting in our kitchen cabinets. The second lesson came from sleep. Richard had developed a habit of snacking on cookies or sweetened cereal before bed, thinking it would help him sleep more comfortably. But sugar before bedtime is like throwing fuel on a fire. His blood sugar would spike, his heart would work harder, and instead of falling into deep, restorative sleep, his nights were broken into restless tossing and turning. Poor sleep, in turn, made his memory worse. Scientists now know that during deep sleep, the brain clears out toxins that build up during the day. If sleep is cut short or shallow, those toxins linger, and the result is foggier thinking the next day. It's no wonder Richard struggled with his memory after years of restless nights fueled by late-night sugar. Susan suggested they replace their bedtime ritual with something calming, a cup of herbal tea, a handful of almonds, or even just warm milk sprinkled with cinnamon. These small changes made an enormous difference. Within weeks, Richard was sleeping more deeply. He no longer woke up at 2 a.m. with his mind racing, and with better sleep, his memory lapses became less frightening and less frequent. Then came the role of stress. Richard had always carried his worries quietly. He didn't complain much, but inside he felt the pressure of aging, of being less useful than before, of losing some of the independence he once had. Stress hormones like cortisol don't just weigh on the heart, they harm the brain too. High cortisol levels shrink areas of the brain responsible for memory. Combine that with a sugary diet, and it's like adding gasoline to an already burning fire. To cope, Richard and Susan started walking together in the mornings. Just a simple 20-minute stroll around the neighborhood. Walking not only reduced stress, it improved blood flow to the brain, feeding it oxygen and nutrients. They found that walking together also gave them space to talk, to laugh, and to reconnect. Those daily walks became as important as their meals. They were nourishment for the soul, and that, in its own way, kept Richard's memory sharper. But perhaps the most surprising lesson came from social interaction. Richard noticed that on days when he spent time with friends, whether it was chatting over coffee, volunteering, or playing cards, his mind felt clearer. Conversations challenged him to recall names, stories, and ideas. They kept his brain flexible, like exercise for the mind. On the other hand, on days when he stayed alone at home, his mind often felt sluggish, as if it were shutting down from lack of stimulation. Scientists call this the use it or lose it principle. The brain, like a muscle, stays strong when it's challenged. Sugar, stress, and poor sleep weaken it, but conversation, laughter, and learning new things strengthen it. Richard began to see how everything in his life was connected. Cutting sugar was the first step, but protecting his memory meant looking at the bigger picture. Here's something important I want you to hear. It's never too late to make changes. Whether you're 60, 70, or even 80, your brain still responds to care. Each healthy meal, each night of deep sleep, each walk, each conversation, it all adds up. And the brain, resilient as it is, thanks you for every choice you make. Richard's story is a reminder that memory loss doesn't have to be an inevitable slide into darkness. Yes, there are things we can't control, like genetics, but there are far more things we can control. Choosing foods that reduce inflammation, building habits that strengthen the brain, protecting sleep, managing stress, and staying socially engaged, these are the tools that help us keep hold of our most precious memories. And here's the part that feels most uplifting. None of these changes require perfection. You don't need to live without ever touching a slice of cake again. You don't need to run marathons or meditate for hours. You just need small, steady steps, ones that fit into your daily life. A little less sugar, a little more movement, a little deeper sleep. That's what adds up. Richard still forgets things now and then. He's human after all, but he no longer fears that every slip is the beginning of the end. He knows he's protecting himself. He knows he has power, and in that knowledge there is peace. As Richard began to move away from the foods that harmed his memory, another question quickly came to mind. If sugar and processed foods weaken the brain, then what foods strengthen it? After all, it's not enough to simply take something away. The body, especially after 60, needs nourishment, real fuel that supports memory, focus, and energy. Just as weeds wither when they don't get water, our brain cells thrive when we feed them what they've been craving all along. This was where Richard's journey shifted from fear to excitement. Instead of feeling deprived, he began to feel empowered. For the first time in years, meals weren't about avoiding guilt. They became about creating health. Each bite became a chance to protect his memory and reclaim his vitality. The first food group that made a difference was leafy greens: spinach, kale, collard greens, and even the humble lettuce we often overlook are packed with vitamins like folate, vitamin K, and lutein. These nutrients are like shields for the brain, slowing down cognitive decline. Richard started by adding a handful of spinach to his morning omelette. At first he thought it was strange, but soon it became routine. That one small change gave his brain the nutrients it had been starving for. Then came berries. Blueberries, strawberries, and blackberries aren't just sweet treats. They're loaded with antioxidants that protect the brain from oxidative stress, a process that speeds up memory loss. Richard swapped his afternoon cookie for a bowl of blueberries with yogurt. Not only did it satisfy his sweet tooth, but it also gave his brain what researchers call neuroprotective compounds. In simple terms, it meant his brain cells could fight off damage more effectively. Another powerful addition was fatty fish: salmon, sardines, and mackerel. These are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, the building blocks of brain cell membranes. Without enough omega-3s, brain cells become brittle and communication falters. But with them, the brain stays flexible and sharp. Richard had never been much of a fish eater, but Susan found easy recipes: grilled salmon with lemon, or sardines mashed with avocado on toast. Soon they noticed not just better memory, but improved mood as well. Omega-3s don't just fuel memory, they fight depression and anxiety, which so often creep in as we age. Nuts and seeds became another staple. Almonds, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, and sunflower seeds provided vitamin E, a nutrient known to slow cognitive decline. Richard loved snacking on walnuts in the afternoon, and Susan started sprinkling chia seeds into their morning smoothies. These little foods carried big benefits, but perhaps the most surprising hero was something Richard already enjoyed: olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil, the kind used in Mediterranean cooking, is filled with healthy fats and antioxidants. It has been linked to lower risks of Alzheimer's and sharper memory in older adults. They began drizzling it over salads, roasting vegetables with it, and even using it in place of butter on bread. What had once been an afterthought in their kitchen became a daily medicine for the brain. And then there were whole grains. Oatmeal, brown rice, and quinoa became their go-to side dishes. Unlike processed white bread or pasta, these grains release energy slowly, giving the brain a steady supply of fuel. No more crashes, no more brain fog in the afternoons. Richard realized that his old habit of white toast with jam had left him groggy by mid-morning, but oatmeal topped with walnuts and berries kept him alert until lunch. Even drinks mattered. Richard used to sip on sweetened iced tea throughout the day, not realizing how much sugar it carried. Now he turned to green tea. The antioxidants in green tea, especially something called EGCG, protect brain cells and improve alertness. It became a ritual for him, sitting in his garden with a warm cup of tea, feeling not only calm but sharper. Perhaps the most comforting change was the discovery that dark chocolate, in moderation, could actually help his memory. Unlike milk chocolate packed with sugar, high-quality dark chocolate contains flavonoids that increase blood flow to the brain. Richard treated himself to a small square after dinner, and for once, he didn't feel guilty. Instead, he felt proud, like he was indulging in something that loved him back. What Richard and Susan learned was this: the brain doesn't need exotic superfoods or expensive supplements. It needs simple whole foods, the kind our grandparents ate before processed snacks filled the shelves. Every meal became a chance to trade something harmful for something healing. But here's the key: they didn't overhaul everything at once. That would have been overwhelming. Instead, they focused on one swap at a time. White bread for whole grain, sugary snacks for berries, processed dressings for olive oil and lemon. Slowly their plates transformed, and with them, so did their lives. Richard found himself remembering details he used to lose. He could follow a conversation more easily, recall names faster, and even tell stories without losing his place. Susan noticed the changes too. Their children, once worried about his decline, began to comment on how much brighter he seemed. It wasn't magic, it was nourishment. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Your brain is still listening to you. It listens to every choice you make at the table, every sip, every snack. It responds to the care you give it, even at 60, 70, or 80. You don't need to fear food, you simply need to choose the ones that love you back. Richard used to dread mealtime, worried that every bite was pushing him closer to memory loss. Now he looks forward to it because every bite feels like an investment in his future. Food is no longer the enemy, it's his ally. And that shift, more than anything, gave him peace of mind. By the time Richard had rebuilt his plate with brain-boosting foods, something deeper began to shift inside him. He no longer saw memory decline as a dark tunnel with no way out. Instead, he realized that his mind was like a garden. What he chose to plant and how he chose to care for it determined what would grow. Food was the soil, but lifestyle was the sunshine and water that allowed his brain to thrive. This was when he began to focus on the daily habits that worked alongside his new diet. You see, nutrition is powerful, but it becomes unstoppable when paired with movement, sleep, mental exercise, and even joy. For years, Richard believed his memory was doomed simply because of his age. But now he understood that every choice, every single day, was shaping his brain's future. The first change came with movement. Richard had always thought exercise meant going to the gym, lifting weights, or jogging, things he never enjoyed. But his doctor explained something that surprised him. The brain thrives on oxygen, and the simplest way to deliver more oxygen is through walking. Just 20 minutes a day can increase blood flow to the brain, encourage new brain cell growth, and sharpen memory. So Richard and Susan started small. Every morning they strolled through their neighborhood. At first, it was just a light walk, but soon it became a cherished ritual. The rhythm of their footsteps, the fresh air, the chance to talk, all of it fed not only their bodies but also their minds. And science confirmed what they felt. People over 60 who walk regularly have a significantly lower risk of cognitive decline. The second habit Richard embraced was sleep. He had always treated sleep as optional, something to be sacrificed for late-night television or worry. But after learning how the brain clears toxins only during deep sleep, he began to see it differently. Sleep wasn't wasted time, it was essential maintenance. Without it, harmful proteins built up in the brain, damaging memory pathways. So Richard made small changes. No more late-night sugar, dimming the lights in the evening, and sticking to a regular bedtime. Within weeks, his nights became calmer and his mornings clearer. His forgetfulness didn't feel as heavy and his energy returned. Sleep, he realized, was as powerful as any medicine. Then came mental exercise. Just as the body weakens without movement, the brain weakens without challenge. Richard used to spend hours in front of the television, letting the stories wash over him without thought. Now he began to replace some of that time with brain-stimulating activities, crossword puzzles, learning new card games, even trying out a few words in a foreign language his granddaughter was studying. Each new challenge lit up parts of his brain that had been dormant. At first it felt awkward, but soon it became exciting. He discovered something remarkable. The brain is never too old to grow. It builds new connections even in our 70s and 80s, as long as we give it a reason to. But perhaps the most overlooked habit was joy. Richard learned that laughter and connection are medicine for the brain just as much as spinach or salmon. Social interaction reduces stress, stimulates memory, and keeps the brain flexible. On the days Richard played cards with friends, shared stories at church, or spent time with his grandchildren, his mind felt brighter and more alive. It wasn't just about avoiding loneliness, it was about feeding the brain with love and purpose. These daily habits worked together like threads in a net, catching his memory before it slipped too far. Food gave his brain the fuel, walking and movement delivered oxygen, sleep cleared away toxins, mental exercise built new pathways, and joy gave him resilience. Each piece alone was powerful, but together they became a shield. Richard often reflected on the turning point, the moment he discovered sugar was silently destroying his memory. At first, that realization had filled him with fear, but now he saw it differently. It was a wake-up call, one that gave him the chance to change. Without it, he might have continued down a path of quiet decline. With it, he built a new life, filled with hope, clarity, and purpose. And here's the most important part. Richard's story isn't unique. It doesn't take extraordinary willpower, expensive treatments, or perfect discipline to protect your brain. It takes awareness, small daily choices, and a willingness to believe that it's never too late. Whether you're 60, 70, or even 80, your brain is still listening. It responds to the care you give it, and it rewards you with sharper memory, stronger focus, and a richer life. So let me ask you, what will you choose today? Will it be a packaged snack that chips away at your memory, or a handful of walnuts that strengthens it? Will it be another late night of restless sleep or an early bedtime that clears your brain for tomorrow? Will it be hours alone in silence or a phone call to an old friend who makes you laugh? Each choice may feel small, but together they shape your future. Richard learned that his golden years could be brighter, sharper, and more joyful than he ever expected. And you can too, because memory isn't just about remembering names or dates. It's about holding on to the life you've built, the people you love, and the stories that make you who you are. Protecting your memory means protecting the heart of your life, and that is always worth fighting for. So here's to you, to the meals you choose, the walks you take, the sleep you embrace, the conversations you cherish. Here's to living not just longer, but sharper, stronger, and with joy. The power is in your hands, and your brain is ready to thank you for it. When Richard looked back on his journey, he often thought about how close he had come to losing the very essence of himself. His memories, his independence, his connection to the people he loved most. And yet, he also realized something remarkable. It wasn't a complicated medical treatment or an expensive procedure that turned things around. It was awareness, it was choice, it was deciding one day at a time to treat his brain like the treasure it truly was. That's the part I want to leave you with today. Your brain is more powerful, more resilient, and more forgiving than you might believe. Even if you've made mistakes in the past, even if sugar, processed foods, or restless nights have left their mark, you still have the power to fight back. The human brain has a stunning ability to heal, to rewire, and to grow stronger when it's given the right care. And that care doesn't come in the form of perfection. It comes in the form of small, steady, loving choices. Choosing fresh foods over packaged ones. Choosing water or tea instead of soda. Choosing a walk in the sunshine instead of another hour in front of the television. choosing sleep instead of late-night worries, choosing laughter, connection, and curiosity instead of isolation. Each of these is a seed planted in the garden of your memory. With time, those seeds bloom into clarity, independence, and joy. Richard's story is proof that change is possible at any age. At 76, he thought his memory was slipping away forever. But with small changes, cutting back on sugar, embracing brain-boosting foods, moving his body, protecting his sleep, and finding joy, he slowed that decline, regained confidence, and found peace of mind. He still has challenges, of course. No one can turn back the clock. But instead of feeling powerless, he feels prepared. Instead of fear, he feels hope, and that's what I want for you. Hope. Not the kind of hope that wishes for things to be different, but the kind of hope that comes from action, from knowing that the choices you make today will shape the memories you hold tomorrow. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. Do you want to be sitting at the table, remembering the stories your grandchildren tell you, laughing at their jokes, recalling your own memories with clarity? Do you want to walk into a room and know exactly why you're there, to keep your independence, to feel sharp and alive? That future isn't guaranteed, but it is possible. And it starts with what you choose today. So here's my invitation to you. Start small, start simple, but start today. Swap that sugary snack for a handful of nuts. Trade one night of restless sleep for a peaceful bedtime routine. Replace a half hour of worry with a half-hour walk. Call a friend. Try a puzzle. Pour yourself a cup of green tea. Every one of these choices adds up. Every one of them protects your brain. And don't underestimate the ripple effect. When you take care of your brain, you also take care of your heart, your body, and your spirit. You find yourself with more energy, more patience, more joy. You become an example to those around you, a reminder that growing older doesn't have to mean growing weaker. It can mean growing wiser, stronger, and more vibrant. Richard used to think his best days were behind him. Now he sees them unfolding in front of him, one choice at a time. And so can you. The food that once silently destroyed his memory no longer controls him. He controls his future. And you have that same power. So here's to you, to the strength you have, to the memories you cherish, and to the choices you'll make from this moment forward. May you find clarity, joy, and health in every step of your journey. And may you remember, always, that it is never too late to begin. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on your own habits. Share your thoughts in the comments, tell us what changes you're ready to make, and inspire others who may be walking the same path. And if you found value here, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you'll have more guidance and encouragement as you continue this journey of living sharper, stronger, and healthier after 60. Your brain is listening, your future is waiting, and today is the perfect day to begin.